So I think this gospel story can be the defining metaphor of Christianity at this time. Jesus is with us. He is asleep, and we're at the helm. So what do we usually expect from people who are at the helm? We expect that they are able and willing to steer the boat. We expect that they have at least a basic knowledge of boating. They know that the blue stuff we're floating on is water, and that water has distinctive properties. And they know that not all water is created equal. It's always H2O, but it reacts differently in different environments, like a bathtub is different from a swimming pool. Same goes for rivers and lakes and oceans. In all those environments, the rules of boating have to be adapted to the environment the water floats in. So we do not need to wake Jesus to tell us that a gale in a bathtub is a rather rare event. But when you take a vessel out to sea, encountering gale force winds is a real possibility. If we are not prepared to deal with bad weather, what business do we have being on a boat, much less being the helmsman? In short, we are responsible for what we do. There is nothing that Jesus has withheld from us that we would need in order to steer our boat. I had a friend who was sailing as a volunteer on a rescue cruiser on the coast of the North Sea. And it was a day with really bad weather, gale force winds. And they were in the harbor and about to have lunch. And in the moment the food hit the table, some dim-witted city dweller took his flimsy sailboat out of the harbor, out to sea. And they on the rescue cruiser, they grunted, they cleared the food away, and they went after him. And they followed him for less than 10 minutes, and then, as everybody absolutely knew would happen, his mast broke, and they towed him back into the harbor, and then they had their lunch cold. What is the secret that Jesus failed to tell that sailor? Did he really need an absolutely awake and over-caffeinated savior by his side, holding his hand, being ready to calm any storm, because the gale warning from the weather report was not clue enough how things would look when he sails out to sea? What do you think about people who jump out of an airplane and then start reading the book, How to Operate a Parachute? Do they need Jesus to tell them that they should read that book well before they jump out of that airplane? Or about those who, really excited, want to go skydiving because it's hip, but it's so expensive, and so they save money by not buying a parachute. For most of the jump, they will be just fine. All the way down, it will go really smoothly. It's only the last 2 seconds that are somewhat dicey. And that's how the Titanic operated. Lifeboats for all the passengers were too expensive, and those they thought, well, we can do with less. And they were right. For most of the trip, it was absolutely smooth sailing. The maiden voyage of the Titanic was a gigantic success until the iceberg came. Jesus taught us a lot of stuff. And if we would do what Jesus taught us, this world would be peaceful and just and tranquil. Do we need Jesus to explain us again that being selfish, ignorant, and violent is a bad idea? We're at the helm. Jesus has explained boating to us. He has given us charts. He has taught us how to navigate. And he warned us that there might be strong winds that will blow in our faces. Are we still not prepared enough to take our boat out to sea. Through the technical revolutions of the last decades, this world has gotten much smaller. More and more, we notice that all human life on this planet is interconnected. It is interconnected like the oceans are interconnected that cover 75% of our planet. They store heat, they produce oxygen, they filter carbon out of the air. Oceans are home to hundreds of thousands of species, and most of them are still undiscovered because we know more about the surface of the moon than we know about the deep sea. The oceans create our weather, they make wind and rain. They are a globally connected system of energy exchange that makes this dot in the vastness of space a blue dot. The blue dot of life. And for most of our history, we didn't really care what happens beyond the horizon. And understandably so. For most Europeans, the Mongol invasion of China in the 1200s had absolutely no impact on their lives. The Oklahoma land run was a non-issue on the Lower Rhine. But the next one to invade China faces a nuclear-armed nation. And when the H-bombs start flying even in the remotest corners of the earth, we will feel it. Fallout will sooner or later poison our soil and water, and nuclear winter will change our planet. And we have a new camera system installed in this church so that the office can monitor the activity in our building. Or, when they have no time, we could, in theory, ask my mother in Berlin to do the monitoring. We could feed those images onto the internet and they would be available from Oklahoma to Mongolia. That doesn't matter much with our church, but with the same technology, you ran factories in Bangladesh that needed to be just down the street to function. You can sit in New York and check if your employees in Cape Town are 2 minutes late for work. And when they are, you can shoot off a flaming email to the HR department in Singapore. This world is a global world today, and that will not change. No matter how badly we want to go back to the time when it simply didn't matter what they did in India. But today, when India plays standard of living catch up with us, and when they fuel that development with fossil fuels, then they will not just poison their air. When the Chinese want to eat as much meat as we do, have as much cars and air conditioners and cheap airfares as we do, then we will feel that they do not live an ocean away, but right next door. And we do not need Jesus to explain that fact to us. But maybe we want to wake him and tell him to stop that storm. Make the Chinese ride bikes and stick with rice au nature. Make the Indians not dig up the coal and burn it like we did. Make them stay in their picturesque villages with no indoor plumbing. Make them go to bed when it gets dark, because all that electricity that they need to illuminate their country like we illuminate ours is just too much for the environment. Make the Brazilians not burn the forests so that they can make tons of money with agriculture like we do. What do you think Jesus would say? Is Jesus going to calm that storm for us? But what if they wake him too and tell him that they want to live like we do? Is he going to tell them, oh, sorry, you can't? This earth has limited resources and they're already taken. But here our ship metaphor ends. A ship has one helmsman, one captain, and what the captain says goes. And sometimes captains say, we do not really need to reduce our speed because some meteorologist who does not factor in the harsh realities of the shipping business speculates about icebergs. I'm the captain, I'm going to keep the timetable, and the Titanic will make the fastest ocean crossing ever. Full steam ahead, the shareholders will thank us. In contrast to that, our boat has a collective helm, and we have to negotiate with each other what course we want to steer. And that in itself is annoying enough. It takes time and nerves and goodwill to stay sane in that process of negotiation. But in the moment that is especially difficult because one half of us believes that the other half of us wants to sink the ship. And so we hate each other with a passion that makes any real consideration of the course impossible. I spoke recently to a person who was upset about the inflammatory stuff that is posted on the internet about that person's political views. And at closer inspection, that person also posts inflammatory stuff on the internet that is a conglomerate of half-truths, fabrications, and outright lies. And that person knows that. But that person does it because the others do it. But that person is absolutely willing to stop and resume common decency, but only when the others stop first. When that is our approach to community conflict, no one will be steering any sensible course in the foreseeable future because we will be busy defaming our opponents instead of searching for common ground. To paraphrase Jesus, they will know you by the lies you tell about each other, by the grudge you hold against each other, by your willingness to assume the worst about each other, by the passion with which you go to war with each other. I think it's time for ISIS to sit down, break out the popcorn, and enjoy the show. And when we're done with each other, they can claim victory from the comfort of their couch. Do we really need to wake Jesus? We know what he would say anyway. We need to love each other. They know you by the love you have for each other. Our common ship is not a battleship. It is not made for victory. It is a global ark that carries all lives through the storm until it reaches a shore where all life is safe. And until we do not provide sensible seamanship for that boat we all sit in, and that we cannot leave because there is no second boat, we are not exercising Christian discipleship that follows the light of the world. What we do now has its origins not in God, but in the forces of darkness. And into darkness is where those forces want to lure us. Let us not help them, but let us sail into the opposite direction. Amen.